My name is Bill Scollard, and I'm originally from Burlington, Ontario. I came to Halifax in 1985 to play football for the St. Mary's Huskies. Now, let me tell you a little bit about those 1985 St. Mary's Huskies football team, the one that I joined. In the 10 years prior to my arrival, from 1976 to 85, the St. Mary's Huskies won exactly 22 games and lost 49 in that 10-year span. As you might have guessed, there was no playoff appearances in those years. In 1985, we were ranked 25th of the 25 teams in the National University Football Rankings, the undisputed worst football team in Canada, and we were in the middle of an 18-game losing streak. That was the SMU football team I joined in 1985. The head coach of the 85 Huskies was Larry Utek. Some of you might recognize that name. Coach Utek had played in the CFL for many years, had just retired, and was new to university coaching. He was a quiet man, very much an introvert, and very passionate about winning. Coach Utek loved his players, and we loved him. Coach Utek died of Lou Gehrig's disease in 2002 on Christmas Day, when he was only 50 years old. I was honored to be asked by Coach to be one of the speakers at his funeral. He left a huge legacy at St. Mary's, in Nova Scotia, and in Canada. In Halifax, he was elected as a city alderman, served as deputy mayor, received the Order of Canada, and just this past year was voted into the CFL Hall of Fame. And we all miss him. I arrived in Halifax in August 1985 for training camp. I wasn't a very good football player. I was small and slow for my position, which was receiver. I was hoping to make the team. Over the years, people asked me why I came to St. Mary's to play football. And my simple answer was, because no one else asked. I wasn't much of a student, and I figured I would either fail out academically or maybe not be good enough to make the team, and then I'd just go home. I did think if the team was that bad, I probably had a chance. When I got to camp, I couldn't believe how good the talent was on the team. How could this team not be winning? If this team had lost 18 straight games, the rest of the league had to be very good. We had our first game on the road against St. X. We outplayed them the entire game on offense, outgained them 2-1 in yards, but kept making little errors to keep the score close. We were down by a score of 13-11 with time running out, and we drove down to the St. X 5-yard line with just a few seconds left. The field goal team came out on the last play of the game to kick a game-winning 12-yard field goal, and we would win. We'd stop the 18-game losing streak, and we'd be 1-0. Our center snapped the ball over the holder's head, and the game ended. We lost. I couldn't believe it. The game was ours to win, and we gave it away. The bigger surprise for me came in the dressing room after the game. I was sitting there completely devastated that we had lost that way. And as I looked around the dressing room, most of the team didn't seem that upset. People laughing, joking, talking about heading downtown to the bars that night. I didn't know what to think. We had a good week of practice the following week. We were headed to Wolfville to play Acadia. Acadia won the Atlantic Championship the previous year. It was a good game, a close game. We were in midfield with only seconds to go. We were down 13-12. With 10 seconds left, I ran a fly pattern and caught my first pass and was tackled at the 2-yard line. As soon as I caught it, I thought, we're going to win. Call a timeout, field goal team comes in. We kick a 9-yard field goal, and we beat the current Atlantic champions, and we're 1-1. Our quarterback panics, and instead of calling a timeout, calls a running play. We get stopped at the line of scrimmage, and time runs out. We lose again. I walk off the field in complete disbelief that we lost like that. We're 0-2, and 2 of the ugliest losses ever. We get into the dressing room. And I look around, and guess what? Most of the players don't seem upset. A little bit of joking, people talking about their own statistics, what bars they were going to visit that night in Halifax. I couldn't believe any of this. I'm thinking, what a bunch of losers. On Monday morning, I went to see Coach Utek. I wanted to talk to him. I needed to talk to him. I was struggling with this because as a rookie, the only thing you're supposed to do is work hard and shut your mouth. It wasn't a rookie's place to be critiquing the team. I knocked on the coach's door and the coach invited me in. I really didn't know him at all and had no idea how to react to a rookie coming in to talk about what I was going to talk about. I was super nervous and he asked me what was up. I finally got the nerve to say, Coach, I don't think this team wants to win. He was typing the whole time and he kept on typing. I thought he might lose it and kick me out of his office. After a long pause, he said, sorry, Bill, what did you say? And I thought, oh crap, he didn't hear me. I took another deep breath and said it again. I don't think this team wants to win. He kept typing, no real reaction. He never looked up from his typing and finally said, I know. Now, I don't know what I was expecting to hear from Coach Utek in that moment, but that wasn't it. I didn't know how to respond, so I just sat there. After a long silence, he said to me, so what are you going to do about that? I thought, what am I going to do about that? I'm a rookie, just happy to make the team. We had captains and we had all-star CFL draft picks, 4th and 5th year seniors. What was I going to do about that? Then he turned his chair to look directly at me and said, what are you going to do about that? I brought you and others here so you could help fix that. We talked for 2 hours. He said that we had a long culture of losing. We needed to change that to a culture of winning. He said it was the hardest thing you can do in sport and in life. It is also the most rewarding thing when it happens. There's nothing greater than turning a losing program into a winning one. And it will happen here. He said that we needed to build a really compelling vision and recruit the right leaders to buy in and to deliver that vision. He said we don't need to get everyone to buy in. We just need to get enough of the team to commit and they'll carry the rest. He said it would take time. It would be really hard. We needed to change almost everything. He said the actual wins would come last. The culture needs to change first, and the wins start to come, and then they keep coming. He said most people who attempt to change culture usually give up long before they start to see the wins, to see the fruit of that effort. Now, I'm not sure I completely understood everything he was talking about, but it was exciting to hear those words and his passion. He didn't seem to have any doubt this was going to happen. That was the first of many talks we had in my 5 years at SMU. That 1985 team won 2 games to stop that losing streak, but also lost 5. I scraped through academically and trained hard in the summer for the upcoming season. The first day of training camp in 1986 started with a team meeting, as they always do. We had all the players, probably 70 back then, the coaches, the trainers, support staff, all gathered in one of the theater classrooms at St. Mary's. Coach Utek stood up to give his opening talk, and he started with these words. In 3 years, this team will be playing in the national championship, the Vanier Cup. It was a ridiculous statement. We hadn't had a winning season in 11 years. We won 2 games the previous 4 years. I was thinking if we could just win half our games, it'd be a miracle. But that's not what he said. He said we'd be playing in the national championship in 3 years. When he said those words, somebody laughed out loud. Not for very long, but they laughed. And after a long silence, he repeated it. In 3 years, this team is going to be playing in the Vanier Cup. He just kept scanning the room, looking at the faces, and saying nothing. That was a big dream, a ridiculous dream, an absurd dream, an exciting dream. Did most in the room believe it? I would say no. Coach Utek said that we needed to dream big, If it feels like it's attainable, what's the fun in that? Aim high, be bold, make it so ridiculous. Just thinking about it makes your head spin. You can't put any limits on your dreams. Dream of playing 500 ball, and that is your ceiling. Dream of greatness, and you remove all ceiling. He then said that not all of us in the room would make it, and that was okay. He said winning wasn't for everyone. He said everybody wants to win, but most are simply not willing to do what is required to win. He said winning wasn't normal. To win, you have to do extraordinary things. You can't be one of the crowd, because the crowd doesn't win. You have to stand out and act differently. You have to value success more than others. You have to want it more. And wanting it more is the decision you make and act upon, not something an inherent quality that naturally exists. It's a choice you make. He shared exactly what he expected of us. We had to get better everywhere. He told us the current starters probably wouldn't be starters. Some of the guys who were in the dressing room, who were dressing on game days, we only dressed 40 guys on game day. We're told they probably wouldn't be dressing anymore. He would push us beyond our limits, and we would start to win. And then we'd keep winning. He said, some of you will decide you are not willing to do what is required, and you will cut yourself. And that happened. Some people didn't return the next day. He said that others just won't be talented or hungry enough, and he would need to cut them, and that was okay. He told us if you're not absolutely passionate about completely committed to play football for the St. Mary's Huskies, then do yourself and your teammates a favor and go find something to be passionate about. There is no room on this team for half in. Your lack of commitment will negatively impact the team, and he will not allow that. Then he promised for the ones who stay, this will be one of the hardest, most rewarding things you will ever experience, and you will draw on this experience the rest of your lives, because we will win, and it is going to be epic. That year, we added some key players and removed some others. On a side note, during training camp that year, in my second year, I was voted one of the team captains by the players. I was a captain for the next 4 years, one of my greatest honors in sport. Coach Utek owned the results of our successes and failures, and he held each of us accountable. One of my very favorite stories about Coach Utek happened in my second year. We'd actually won a few games. We were getting a little complacent with a bit of success. Remember, the culture is a long game. It happens over time, and sometimes it's 2 steps forward and a step back. There are no shortcuts to build real sustainable culture. Our third game of the season was against St. FX. It was going to be broadcast nationally on TSN. Now, that was a big deal in 1986 to have TSN come to Halifax. It would be exciting to have our game broadcast nationally. We had a number of players like myself who came from across Canada, and we would get a chance to have our families see us play. We had high expectations for the home game to impress the fans and our families. St. FX beat us 41-0. 41-0 on home field on national TV. Just brutal. As I was walking off the field, I saw Coach Utek in the TSN booth being interviewed by the TSN broadcasters. I felt so bad that I had to sit there in front of a national audience and try to explain how his team just got hammered. A little while later, as we were changing in the dressing room, Coach Utek came in. I thought he was going to go crazy screaming at us for how poorly we played, and I was hoping he would. We totally deserved it. When he walked in, he was very subdued. It all got very quiet as we waited for him to speak. In a very gentle voice, he encouraged all his players to gather around him, to get real close. He was emotional. The first words out of his mouth were, "I owe you all an apology." We just stared at him and at each other. Nobody said a word. "I owe you an apology because I failed to prepare you properly for this game, and I own the loss. I am clearly not a good enough coach, and I'm sorry." We all felt horrible. Now, he added that He would make a commitment to us right there and then. For however long he was given the privilege to coach this football team, he would never have us not prepared for a game. Then he added that commitment to us would start at the base of the Gorsberg School Hill at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning to run sprints until we could no longer run sprints. He also added that anyone who didn't show up or showed up late for that run would no longer be on the team. And he left the room. Not everybody showed up at 6 a.m. and that was okay. That year, we only won 2 games. Our record was still 2-5, but things were different. We were in most of the games we played. We were no longer an easy win for the teams we played. We were getting better. Practices were more intense, meetings more serious and focused. Expectations were higher. We added more players, replaced others. It felt different, and it was different. The following year, we went 5-2, 5 wins. We beat Acadia in the playoffs to win the Atlantic Championship for the first time in 12 years. We played McGill in the Atlantic Bowl. There was 8,000 rabid fans at Husky Stadium that day. It was wild. On the last play of the game, McGill kicked a 45-yard field goal to beat us 30-29. McGill won the Vanier Cup the following week, beating UBC by 36 points. That loss hurt, but it made us hungry. The following year, we added pieces. The culture had changed. We expected to win. It was less about Coach Utek and the other coaches instilling the culture in us. It was the players who had bought in, and we were living and reinforcing the culture to each other. It was no longer just top down, but also bottom up. When your team buys into a culture and starts reinforcing it to each other, that is when culture takes root, when you're really living it. If you hadn't bought into the new culture, you actually stand out, and not in a good way. Good culture actually policed itself to stay healthy and strong. We were ranked number 1 in the country to start the season. We stayed number 1 for the entire season. We had the number 1 offense in Canada and the number 2 defense in Canada. We went undefeated in the regular season, won the Atlantic title, and played Bishops in the Atlantic Bowl. Bishops had the number 1 defense in Canada. We had the number 1 offense. We beat them 44-10. Three years earlier, Coach Utek stood up and announced to a team that had lost 18 games in a row and had been in the playoffs in 12 years, that if we stayed and committed to what he wanted us to do, we'd be playing in the Vanier Cup, the national championship in 3 years. 3 years later, for the first time in 15 years, we were playing for a national championship. Now, unfortunately, the following week at the Vanier Cup, things didn't go exactly as how we planned, but that's a story for another day. Now, remember the previous 10 years, the team had won 22 games and lost 49. In the next 23 years, we won 145 games and lost 45. We won 7 Atlantic titles in those 23 years, 17 Atlantic titles in those 23 years. We won 5 Atlantic Bowls and we won 2 national championships. Before Coach Utek died in 2002, then the athletic director at SMU, and confined to a wheelchair due to the ravages of ALS. He lobbied hard for the 88 team to be inducted into the SMU Sports Hall of Fame. Up to that point, only teams that have won national championships were considered for induction, but Coach Utek demanded the 88 team be inducted. He said that was the team that brought the program back to its previous glory and set the table for all the success that followed. The Vanier Cup teams of the 90s and 2000s were standing on the shoulders of that 1988 team. In 2010, 22 years after that Vanier Cup season, 46 members of that team gathered at St. Mary's to be inducted into St. Mary's Sport Hall of Fame. It was a special, special weekend, a chance to honor Coach Utek, who had passed 7 years earlier, a chance to go back and revisit a special time, a special season, and a special team with some years of perspective behind us. When I think back to that time, it brings back lots of memories. and many lessons learned. You need to have a great leader who is courageous enough to dream big, to share that dream with others, and to keep going when the doubters start doubting. And there's always lots of doubters. You need to choose leaders wisely to make sure they are bought into the vision and willing to do what is required for the dream to come to life. You need to be willing to make tough decisions and have difficult conversations, and you need to have the courage to remove people if they're not willing to commit. You need to be willing to push people and hold each other accountable. And you need to support and love each other when all others are doubting you. You need to emotionally invest in the cause and keep walking forward regardless of circumstance. You need to control the things you can control and trust in the vision. On a personal note, 2 years after the '88 team was inducted into the Hall of Fame, I was inducted into the Hall of Fame. This is a picture of my mom, who passed away just a couple of years ago, standing beside my plaque at St. Mary's. That was a really special day with my sister Joan and mom present. Now, to continue on the theme of great comebacks, this talk would be incomplete if I didn't share just a bit about my personal journey, specifically about my faith. I grew up in a Catholic family, which was defined by myself and my 4 siblings being dragged to church each Sunday by our dad. I didn't have any relationship with Jesus. I didn't even know what that meant. I wasn't passionate or excited or committed to my faith. When I left home to go to university, I left whatever faith I had behind. Our mom loved Jesus and was very faithful, but none of her kids shared her faith, which I'm sure broke her heart. I got very busy with life, and I had all my worldly dreams come true and then some. 8 years ago, I thought I had achieved everything I could have dreamed of with family and career and possessions. Most people who looked at my life thought the same, but they were wrong. My outward life was in sharp contrast to my real life. I was living a bunch of lies. I was completely empty inside, completely lost. In my emptiness, at one of the lowest points of my life, I decided to go to Sunday Mass for the first time in a really long time. And that made absolutely no sense because the church had never played any role in helping me in any way. When the priest stood up to give the homily that day, he started with these words: "Is there anyone here who people think has it all and they are completely empty inside?" That put me on the most unexpected and unbelievable path that had me retire early from my career, join St. Benedict Parish, go deep into my faith, understand the true love of Jesus, feel the power of the Holy Spirit, to really know in all my messiness and all my brokenness that Jesus loves me unconditionally. When I found my faith, I was excited to call my mom with the good news. She had just started with her challenging journey with Alzheimer's, and sometimes you weren't exactly sure what she would say. Anyone familiar with that disease knows what I'm talking about. I phoned mom from Halifax with lots of emotion in my voice and told her that I was going to share some good news, that I'd found my faith. She said that was wonderful, and she'd been praying for that for 50 years. After a short pause, she added, "You're a bit of a slow learner, aren't you?" I didn't respond and after a few seconds, she added, "You get that from your father." I am all in with my love of Jesus. I'm passionate about my faith and sharing it with others. My life has meaning that it never had before. For the first time in my life, I know who placed me here, and more importantly, I know why. When I've been able to surrender, God has used me, worked through me to help others to find their faith. My 18-year-old daughter, Gabby, who up to 6 years ago had never been inside a church in her life, is all in with her faith and freely shares it with others. You need to be all in. You need to invite Jesus into your life. We all need to give it all to God and then let him guide us to our most fulfilling life. He doesn't want part of us. He wants all of us. He put you and me on this earth for a purpose, and we need to ask him what that is. And when he reveals it to us, we need to live it to the fullest. God wants you and me in the arena. He wants our faces marred with dust and sweat and blood. He wants us spent in his worthy cause. He wants us to be daring greatly in sharing the good news of his beloved Son. There is no room in his plan for timid souls. He wants us to have an abundant life, a life in its abounding fullness of joy and strength. He wants us to receive his light fully, then share that light with his broken people he places in our path. And he expects us to act when he creates those moments of grace. And guess what? He will never give up more than we can handle, never give us more than he can handle. Because he promises he is walking with us every step, fully equipping us to do his work. Success for you won't mean playing in the Vanier Cup in 3 years or any other worldly accomplishment. Success for you and me will be being guided by Jesus to walk on his path and to encourage others to do the same, so we can all experience a little heaven right here on earth. And when yours and my purpose on this earth is complete, we will all be welcomed into his heavenly kingdom with the simple words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Amen.